I want to start us off with some fundamentals. Lacan's topology is the center of much abuse, whether due to misunderstanding or, in the Anglophone world, a pure lack of resource. In this way, I'd like to begin with an attempt at manifesting some direction. Why topology? Why would we write clinical material in this way, a way that's often touted as a theoretical tool?
Okay, this actually is very much older than one thinks, because it is very common that to associate topology to Jacques Lacan. But it's a way to forget um, the first main actor using topology in psychoanalysis, which is Sigmund Freud. Um, he didn't call that topology, although not so far. But I would say that Lacan is a pupil of the Freudian approach of topology of the subject, and someday we'll describe um, how this knowledge of topology that was brought to us by Sigmund Freud um, has been used by Jacques Lacan in the prolongement. How do you say prolongement? In the same direction, than Freud used. So he used concepts that of topology that Freud did not use, but the concept of topology of topos were used to begin with by Freud.
So you're talking in particular about the first and second topologies of Freud.
Mhm. Yes, exactly. Exactly. And namely, the famous letter number 52, if I'm right, from Freud to Fliess is a perfect example of topology structure, which is used to describe the how an object becomes an object of desire.
If you look at the arc of Freud's work, he was trying to describe what his experience was in the clinic without having a topological base as we understand topology, but he came up with statements and propositions that were topological. Um, I don't know if it's in letter 52 or in um, the text on the one of the texts on the ego from the 14 the teens, where he says that the ego is first a projection on a surface.
Oh, oh, really?
Yeah, it's in one of those articles. My brain is functioning properly, but that in that sense, then you're not dealing with something. And then two, on his discussion of the unconscious, he never thought of it as, from my reading of what he wrote, um, as someplace other. The diagrams that he generated of the unconscious um, sort of portrayed it as an empty bag or a sphere with a hole. But I would say that the different things that Freud said led Lacan to look further into topology. And he speaks of it um, in the seminar on the purloined letter. when he's talking about a structure with movement, but the structure stays the same, and also how does structure form? In his example, he talks about the sequence of ones and zeros or dots and dashes or pluses and minuses that appear random but become patterned and form a structure with punctuation or a cut. And that's, in some sense, becomes the basis for what constitutes the act of the psychoanalyst. That you place a punctuation in the flow of discourse and it retroactively forms a structure.
So I'm interested in this word, this idea of prolongement, this continuity. Is there a discovery in the sense of an uncovering that we witness with topological writing? In other words, is this a logic that can only be expressed in a certain structural way? Or is this an invention more in terms of a metaphor that we use to engage with concepts that perhaps escape language entirely?
If you consider these topological structures as metaphors, in a way, you miss something. You miss the amazing fact that conversely, if you use these topological structures as a way to depict the real of the subject, then what's really fascinating is that it gives very simple explanations of many constructions or situations the subject encounters. And this is very, very interesting.
So you would say that we really can use topological writing productively in a clinical sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, the easiest one that I use all the time, because it's not a pathological example, but it's as Freud said, something of this day-to-day psychology, psychopathologie de la vie quotidienne. I don't know.
Everyday life.
Yeah, everyday life. When you talk, you make a slip of the tongue. And when I make a slip of the tongue, when I utter one word, it's absolutely not the word I intended to use. That's the definition of the slip of the tongue. And half a second later, I realized I said green instead of red, and I correct. I say, "Oh, sorry, no, it's red. I meant red." Okay. So it's so standard. Everyone experiences that every day, and we can just forget it or not get interested in the structure. But if you get into the structure, there is something extremely fascinating in this very, very simple slip of the tongue. I wanted to say green and I said red. Okay. Oh, sorry, I meant green. Okay. This sentence um, um, You see, for instance, I said sentences, then I said, oh no, sentence. That's the slip of the tongue all the time. If you get interested in what's happening there, it is that while the time t of this utterance, the right word is absolutely unconscious. When I said sentences, the word sentence was not there. I could not have access at the word sentence when I said sentences. Okay? But half a second later, I said sentence instead of sentences because I heard what I said. But if you get into the structure of what's happening, you can say it's no big deal. Or you can say, but what is happening? How can something be so unconscious and half a second later so conscious? What could be the structure that authorizes this magic transformation? But you have then to consider it as something magic because you do that all the time. So you just pass to the next sentence without questioning that. But there we say, I wanted to say that S2, let's call it like that. Okay. Instead of S2, I say S1. Okay. Good. And 1 second later, or half a second later, I come to the realization that I had said S1 instead of S2. So the S2, I say, oh no, the word is sentence, not sentences, because I meant only one sentence. Okay. How does what's happening, how can that be extremely opaque? And how can it come extremely transparent and obvious? This can be time t1 and this is t2. What happened there? And instead of not questioning that, Lacan did put the question on. And he said, this fraction bar, what could be the structure of this fraction bar, which had the power to express that the S2 was absolutely unconscious and half a second later absolutely conscious. What could be the topological structure? This is actually, if we consider that as a fraction bar, like 1/3 or 2/4 or whatever, it does not explain anything. But if you say this fraction bar as the structure of a Möbius band, we know what Möbius band is. It's the fact that the S2 is here under and the S1 here, and when the time is traveling here, then after half a second, I am in front of the S2. The Möbius band as a topological structure is actually the easiest way to depict any slip of the tongue, and that's a common use. It's the easiest use of topology because you experiment that every day. Just so, and the consequences then are extremely important. Then you have to admit that that it does not work. You have to admit that this S2 is absolutely unconscious. You have to admit the structure of the unconscious. And then you can answer a question that comes always for everyone. Gee, what is the unconscious? And then with this simple structure, you can say the unconscious is what is not conscious at a t time, at a time. Unconscious is what is not conscious now. But the very instant later, it can be conscious. Okay? This is, okay, let's figure like this. Okay? Okay, this is an example. But using the same example, you can say, well, but actually, to have access to this S2 can be extremely noxious for me. Maybe it can last years of psychoanalysis to let this intention, because there we have the intention. Okay, because what I did not write is the S3 here, which is in a way the matter, the intention that led to the slip of the tongue. And this matter, this reason, this intention that I had there, it has no it's very easy, but sometimes some slip of the tongues are really extremely generating a lot of anxiety or anguish. And then the discovery of this F3, which is, of course, which there is unconscious. I've not the okay, let's carry on here. Okay. S3 above S4. To bring the S3 from below to above can last the duration can be for many years sometimes.
For me, that's the power of the delta topology, because the structure, the cut establishes a structure wherein certain paths through the structure become unavailable. Certain nodes of the structure are only accessible by a given path. And what does it take to find your way through the structure to get back to or get to the node in the structure you want to get to? It's not linear. It's nothing straight line. And that for me showed that any, for lack of a better way to put it, any two or three dimensional understanding of Freud is incorrect. You need the dimension of time. You need the time to traverse the structure. Mm-hmm. And neither the subject in analysis nor the person placed in the role of analyst by the subject in analysis know what that time to traverse the structure is. In the three prisoner discussion, that, there's the instant of seeing, the time for understanding, and the moment to conclude. And that time for understanding can be decades, if it happens at all.
Yeah, if it happens at all.
So this demonstrates a sort of break with what we would consider linear time and linear logic in the
Hmm.
structure of the signifying chain. But this applies to the knot as well, doesn't it? With the crossings and impingements, these aren't linear temporal elements. That's why, particularly, Lacan would say it's a thinking best done with one's hands, because this isn't a reductive process. Sometimes you tie one knot that unties another. Is this correct? Is this an understanding that makes sense?
Well, if you refer to the structure of the Borromean knot, um, which is a way to describe the many things, but which is one way to describe the emergence of an object of desire that Lacan called objet petit a, little a. Then my tendency, probably some other won't use that in the same way as I do, but my tendency is to say that in every building, emergence, invention of a new object petit a, object A, there is a new creation and invention and emergence of a new Borromean knot. The temporal structure is completely different than what we see here. The temporal structure there is, for me, the building, one building of a Borromean knot, and we'll see someday that it's even a Borromean knot with four consistencies, not three, but whatever. But it's I would say it's the cause or the consequence of the creation of one object of desire. Uh, I can say, this smartphone is for me an object of desire, which is very important, and it's surrounded by the one instance. Yes, let's talk about instance of one instance of creation of a real, imaginary, and symbolic. For instance, when I'm in the street, I touch my pocket, and hopefully finding that I can touch my phone. Otherwise, I'm going to be very anguish. Um, a lot of anxiety is going to come. So it's one creation. It's an object A, and it's um, it happens at the same time as the creation of RSI, one R, one S, and one I. That's how
So
I.
that's very important to me in understanding your apprehension of topology, since the RSI seminar of Lacan is one that you found particularly generative. So I suppose I pose the question to both of you. What did you think when you encountered topology as a faculty of psychoanalysis? How does it appear to you now, sort of in contrast or in tandem with this moment of initial apprehension?
I grabbed the topological structures of Jacques Lacan in the reverse order because I was attending his seminars at a time when he was doing RSI and then the symptom. But I was too young to have access to the previous seminars when he dealt with the projective plane and the cross cap and so on and so forth. So I was interested to begin with the RSI structure and then the symptom, the fourth consistence of not, and then it's later when I read or reread, read the écrits and the seminars that I got more interested for the clinical point of the structure of the projective plane and inherited from Freud approach, and I don't use these structure for the same opportunities in the clinic. For instance, because I have experimented that with one patient a long time ago. Can't remember the details, and they're not very interesting. He was describing something that that for me was he was talking about many images, and so for me that was belonging to the imaginary, and he was dealing and speaking of many real consequences, and that I put in the real, and that's all what he said. And I said, well, do you think there is only these two dimensions which are important? Because I was thinking of a third one. And he said, oh no, of course, I spend hours to make things fitting, to build sentences, to make one connected to the other. So he brought directly the symbolic one and the subject of his procrastination and his pain, in a way, his symptom. It's just because I had in mind the Borromean structure, Borromean knot, and he was talking about his objects of desire. And by describing these two elements, which were the source of many anguish in him, I had the feeling that maybe he was forgetting, not mentioning the importance of the third one, which was the symbolic, and he jumped immediately. Oh yes, of course. I spent hours to describe the combination of the so on and so forth. You see.
I think of one example that has always sort of been my aha moment with Lacan, because historically I had been working from more of a structural and frame perspective. And I had a patient come in who had had a very upsetting encounter with her supervisor. And the way she described her rage coming up was that she said, all of a sudden it swept over me. I reached out, swept with my arm everything off his desk, and grabbed the phone and handed it to him and told him to call my former employer. And she said it was like, she couldn't think of, she said it was like one of the Greek or Roman gods of the sea just swept up. And she finally came up with the term, she said, Poseidon. And she said it slowly and emphasized each syllable. And thinking about punctuation and structure, I had been trying to work my way through the actual experiment of the delta topologies of the grouping of the random sequences. I paused for a moment and I asked her, did you say Poseidon or did you say Pa? Whose side are you on? And that was kind of just that shift in punctuation broke something in her, opened something up because of her family dynamic. It's like, how do you listen? How do you intervene? What do you pay attention to? And how do you stand outside of the structure of the discourse that the client is presenting you with to hear it differently, to punctuate it differently and put it in a different structural relationship?
John, it reminds me of who is it, Serge Leclerc, and what was the neologism, poor jelly, poured
Mm-hmm.
POO, and then as
Yeah.
you expand these terms, they come under new light. Different punctuation provides different context for a certain neologism or formulation.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that that's quite literally among the most technical aspects of topological writing. And so, if I may, I have some technical questions about topology that are a little more demanding. So, we spoke the other day about a particular conceptual logic from Lacan, Jacques, that a true knot can't be flattened. As an aspect of what might be called the grammar of topological writing, I find this proposition fascinating, but principally, I'm more interested in what this formulation suggests about the division between Lacan's topology of the subject and mathematical topology, for instance. So, do the rules of algebraic and geometric topology, in a strict mathematical sense, carry over entirely? Or, in other words, is Lacan's topology distinct from the very imaginary domain of mathematics?
You are putting forward something that is actually a real question. You are talking about imaginary mathematics. We are talking now about when you mean imaginary, it means that we are looking at images. We are dealing with images. These are images on the paper board. And we are dealing with something very, well, let's put it that way. I suppose it's the same in the US, but in France, when you were at high school and you learn geometry, you learn that the teacher always tells you to that you have to reason well with wrong images, and at the same time that you as what you see is always a wrong image, then it's not because you see something on the image that it is equivalent to a demonstration. Well, the basis of Euclidean geometry is that a line has no width, a point has no width. It's in Euclidean geometry, if you see that, it's not because you see this blue line crossing this blue line that it means that there is a point here. It's you have to prove it. You remember that when you were studying the characteristics of a triangle, you have many lines that are crossing on a single point, but you have to prove it. It's not because when I draw it, it's obvious. Look, that is you're gonna get F, or I don't know. You count. Here is 0/20. Okay, that's geometric Euclidean geometry, and that's what we learn at school. And now, if we come to another branch of mathematics, of geometry, which is called topology, then the rules are different, and the rules are that if I can see that these lines are crossing, it means well, the fact you show, we say in French, la monstration vaut démonstration. Monstration, I don't know if you have this word, it doesn't mean a monster, but it's the showing is as the value of a demonstration. And so it's another world. It's a world where when you are able to depict, if you manipulate a rope and do some very complex things with this rope, it is the equivalent of a demonstration. If you can't do it, it's either impossible, but this is different. You have to prove it's impossible. It's not because you can't do it that it is impossible, but as long as you can't do it, you have no demonstration, neither that it's possible nor it's impossible. But as soon as you are able to build it and show it to the audience, it is the equivalent of a demonstration. And this is a particularity of the geometric topology. I don't know if that answers your question.
Certainly. The difference then between Lacan's use of topology and something like strict geometric or algebraic topology, do we situate this difference between monstration and demonstration, or?
No. I believe that the demonstrations and the demonstrations of Lacan are perfect examples of topological demonstrations. It's not there that he's failing or where he fails in mathematics is when he is talking about the golden the golden proportion. He's wrong. He just he put a plus instead of a minus or something like that, and well, never mind. But on topology, what I say is that he uses unnecessary complex examples for his reasoning, but his reasonings seems okay to me. It's well, except for but sometimes his choices, and we'll go into details, but not now. Probably he gets sometimes. I think he gets fascinated by some representations on our 3D world of structures that do not exist in our 3D world. And that when you try to represent them in our 3D world, the consequences are that it leads to the appearance, the emergence of elements that do not exist actually. And I think sometimes he has been fascinated by these fake structures. But I think it's the fact that he had sometimes a poor choice in his representation of, namely, the projective plane, which is a topological structure. And then when you choose to represent it in our 3D world, if you make a poor choice, you might it might lead to failures in understanding sometimes.
So you're talking about the points and lines that many topologists make a fuss over.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the thing of it too is that he was not coming to his lecture audience with things that he had worked out. He was working them out as he was working them. And so, I mean, there are going to be times when it works and it's coherent. And then there will be times where, I mean, even he himself says he's trying to find things. He's stumbling forward.
Sure. There's a beautiful example of this, I think, in the early 70s, where he claims, based on a paper that was published in America some years before, that a levogyric Borromean configuration is a separate knot from a dextrogyric Borromean configuration. And Pierre Curie and others get up on the board and show him, no, look, make this a square and you can just flip the hinge and change the orientation of the knot. So there are, of course, these misconceptions.
You see, that's a good example of demonstration by demonstration.
Sure.
So
what did you pull from the bookshelf there?
Oh, well, it's I can't hide anything. It's that is typical of French mathematics. It's in the, I don't know when it started, maybe in the 20s of the 30s, maybe of the 20th century. There is a group of mathematicians in France. Maybe they were 10 or 20. I don't know. I'm not very. I don't know exactly the invention and the history of this group, but this group invented a name. They invented the name of Nicolas Bourbaki. Okay, and they reinvented the mathematics out of nothing. That's fascinating. If you grab the number one of the books, there is 20 books, and I've got the number one, and I've got this one, which is about topology. The first is about the theories of sets, and he reinvents. They reinvent, or he reinvents, Nicolas Bourbaki. He reinvents a letter. What's a letter? What's a number? It starts from nothing out. But it's why do I say it's typically French? Because they were French, of course, but it's not the main reason. We have in France we have a very different way of dealing with science than in the US and maybe in England as well. I don't know how it goes in the UK. In the US, you can be very good in mathematics and physics, but you have a way to learn it by the easy way. And in France, for an unknown reason, we are very good as well, but we learn it at the hard way. Look, if you see this book is a book of topology, and there is not one single image in it. Although it's topology, you see, it's very hard. Well, to give you because that's why I love to learn physics or mathematics with American books, because you start with your means, your technique. In the US consists to start with many examples, and then at a time you generalize and give the formulas that comes from that. Okay, so that's enlightening. In France, you give a series of formulas, very hard. And if you are able to go up to the 20th or 30th formula, theorems, then they pass you one example. Okay? The conclusion, the consequences are that it's not the same people who are becoming very good scientifics in the US and very good scientifics in France. In France, the good scientifics are people who are very closed in their mind. You know, they can focus days and days without a single example. They have to grab all the theorems one after the other. And it's procrastination put to a high level, and there is a huge selection in France to become a great mathematician or physicist. There is a huge selection, because many people who would have been very good with another means of comprehension, for instance, in the US, they are thrown away every day, every year, every month. They are thrown away because they don't have the mind built up like this. To give you one example about me, when I finished high school and I had to enter the college, I I got into a school which was building these kind of guys. And I said, no, it's too much for me. I'm gonna go into medical school because medical school were more clinic, and that was much easier for me. I was not in this. I could not carry on doing this. You see, that's so that's a book. That's a Bible. The Bible about topology, but it's a Bible with no image.
You shall make no graven image in my name.
Exactly, that's how it is. Once, but you get all the rules. It's a fantastic book if you can get into it. So Nicolas Bourbaki, funny thing about that, during the Nazi, when France was invaded by the Nazis, Hitler, by they said Nicolas Bourbaki, yeah, he must be Jewish, and so they have been looking for him to send him in Auschwitz, but they could never find him because it does not exist. It's only a group of mathematicians.
So, speaking of invention ex nihilo, why then does Lacan come to the Borromean knot? Why not continue with fundamental polygons and the projective plane and the Mobius band by itself?
Well, unfortunately, the person who be able to answer your question is dead. It was a very good friend of mine. It was Belgium, Christian Centenaire. He was extremely good. You put the question you just gave now. He would give you the page where Lacan was the first to say that and then when he answered in another page, and he was really good, really good. But me, I really can't answer that. I can't.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, then perhaps we talk a bit about the logic of topology once again. If the unconscious is a logic of contradiction, does topological writing render this contradictory logic in some way accessible?
I did not understand the question.
Well, it's not unlike what you have already drawn out for us with the example of the slipping of the signifier. But Lacan says that the unconscious is a logic that knows no contradiction, right? In the dream, there's condensation and displacement, but certainly you can be both at the bottom of the ocean and flying if you wish. Does topological writing help us to uncover the meaning of these contradictions, or otherwise bridge nonsense with sense in a certain way?
This utterance of this statement of Lacan is inherited from the same statement from Freud.
In the history of the subject, the time before there was the first cut, because in that sense, there was no limit, there was no castration. The wish was supposed to become reality. And with the cut of castration, there becomes a separation of wish and reality, which in my mind brings us back to the projective plane.
So, because we're speaking in English, I would like to put forward that there are some profound and important contributions in Lacan's topology that our audience might not yet have had access to. I'm thinking in particular of the work of Jean-Michel Vapro, Marc Darmon, etc. Both of these authors propose, more or less, that there's a particular grammar or logic of the knot, transformative operations of Radermeister moves, Riemann manifolds, true holes, etc. There's even an ambitious interest in developing theories of knot surgery, for instance. Can we discuss how some of these contributions and perhaps address their support of Lacan's claim that topology is a writing of the real?
Well, you mentioned the Radarmeister operations. Of course, if a book is that big, there are reasons for that, and it's you cannot do anything with the knot. There are some rules, and they were formalized by Reidemeister, and these rules you can describe them as rules, or you can describe them as a monstration. If it says there is a rule that says that this, you can see it, okay, this is the same as this, okay? This is the same as this. It can be either a rule, it's one of the rules of Reidemeister, and it's as well a monstration. You see?
Sure.
It's because I can do it, or I can use the rule, whatever. If you take the Bourbaki, there is no examples, so there are only the rules which are written, okay, and then you have to deal with that. But this does not answer your question. What was?
So what I'm aiming to get at with this question is to expose some of our English-speaking colleagues to, for instance, the theories of Jean-Michel Vapereau, who took what Lacan had said and pushed it a little further. I'm thinking in particularly of how Vapereau treats the true whole in topological writing, and also to push this in a practical way in tandem with what Lacan states, that topology isn't simply a metaphorical operation that we attribute to states or positions of the subject. This would be very Kleinian. Instead, that this is a real writing where this monstration, for instance, is made absolutely evident.
Yeah, that's what we were saying to begin with about the metaphor. Is it only a metaphor, or is it something real? As long as I can use that for in my clinician practice to give simple explanations or presentation of the symptoms, and a symptom is something real. It's written in the real of the body, and I can put together a symptom and a topological structure. Therefore, for me, it's a way to talk about the real. I'm pretty happy with this.
Sure. But it's different than, say, a nosography or a DSM style set of attributes.
No. The DSM, my PhD, my medical doctor something was about the DSM-3, and the DSM-3, not the 4 or 5, which have different aims. But the number 3 was a way to evaluate how long someone would stay in a hospital. It was evaluation of the consequence of the diagnostic. It has nothing to do with psychoanalysis. It was, and what I did like in the DSM-3 is that it was extremely difficult to make a positive diagnostic. Very difficult. You know, in France and probably in the US, everyone is bipolar.
Or borderline.
Yesterday I wanted to do many things, and today I don't. I feel I don't. I want to stay in bed. So you're bipolar. Okay, this is how it is. But if you deal with the well, it's good we are in my office because I've got everything there. And on the DSM-3, it's the conditions. The conditions for one diagnostic is you have to feel all these things in gray at one time. Otherwise, you never make a positive diagnostic. So it was because usually you say, oh, this guy is hysteric, this one is OCD, this one's without going into the details. And with the DSM-3, it was very helpful for this. But this has nothing to do with psychoanalysis. It's far away.
Sure.
And then on the DSM-4 and 5, the diagnostics were made by people who were working for big pharmaceutical offices, and they it's even worse.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is important, especially for the future of psychoanalysis as it's dangerous to say the word, but as a treatment or as a cure in a way. In my training, for example, the first thing that they teach you about clinical practice is that you need to be able to come up with a diagnosis in 5 minutes. And this is absolutely antithetical to the idea of subjectivity itself. And so I know in France, every so often legislation passes through the government that tries to diminish the role of psychoanalysis, and usually it's struck down with enough letters and enough protest. But it's a challenge that we've already lost in America. And so the difficulty becomes, I recall in the 1960s, Lacan came to New York, I believe, and tried to lecture, and it was a topological lecture, and no one could hear him. But the same remains true today, that Lacan's transmission is difficult to hear. And so I wonder if this is a question that topology, or that the sort of principles of topology can come to reinforce or uncover. What is the future of psychoanalysis? What does it look like going forward?
Well, that's very, very important political question, and which does not stand or is put only on the domain of psychoanalysis. It's a political question which is spreading in all of the so-called evoluted countries, because everything is done in all of these countries to avoid people from talking together. Because what's important is capitalism and fascism, which stands and have a durate only if people are not able to talk together. Only if people are dumb enough to believe anything that is said on the TV. And it's very important to make capitalism remains only if the audience, the public, is made of morons. The more moronic, the best it is for my money as a capitalist. So, and this is the case for psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis, of course, is the smartest way to be able to talk, to deal with one's symptoms, and so on and so forth. And so, it's going to be the aim of many fight, and they're going. Everyone is going to ruin psychoanalysis all over the world. And fortunately, in France, they have not won so far. Hopefully, we're gonna last for maybe a few weeks more.
I think it goes back to what is the subject? The subject is a speaking being. A speaking being exists only in, through, and because of language. And it goes back to, in my mind, the difference between seeing the human being, the speaking being, as a car with a faulty part that needs to be fixed, or as a mystery that needs to unfold through speech. I mean, the APA and the American approach is, like you were saying, Quinn, the person comes into your office and you should be able to diagnose the problem immediately. Whereas, in my mind, from a psychoanalytic perspective, it's only when the sentence ends do you know the meaning of it. And that means only at the end of treatment could you make a diagnosis. Could you put a label on what was the structure that you were dealing with? You are using language as a tool and the speaking of the subject to help them find out how they are knotted and what knots are crucial and what knots can be released, what knots need to be sutured together again. And that's a completely different understanding. It goes back to the difference between T1 and T2. It's the journey around the Mobius band. And you don't know how long that's going to take. You don't know what's going to be uncovered as you make that traversal. And so it's almost like, how do you get people to relinquish their mechanistic worldview? How do you get people to accept that they themselves are formed and castrated by language at the same time? And that's the radical notion, that it's a liberation one by one.
On a sentence like, I am OCD, and you, as a professional, you're going to have 5 minutes to decide whether OCD is true or false, or on what the patient says. Okay, good news. On the analytical side, you can focus on the I who says, I am something, and to let the patient develop with many other I sentences why he believes he is OCD or whatever, but OCD has to fall down. It's an attribute that is only to make an individual instead of a subject. And what you are going to focus on is the first letter of the sentence, I. But that is it's with the capitalism. It is they use a means of foreclusion. The I has to be foreclosed. And what's going to be valued is the OCD term. What's after the verb? Everything is focused there. And so I there is a revolutionary. OCD is a product of capitalism. But the I is that's where revolution stands.
You've led my question to sense. That's absolutely what I'm wondering on a very observational level. If it's this focus not on the subject but on the object that then reinforces this market of other objects, which has no room. It's a foreclosed space to the subject. You're OCD, you're this, you are that. Let me market you your identity as we sort of move along. This makes psychoanalysis very difficult to practice, I would say, in these conditions. No?
Well, yes and no. If you have been through a psychoanalysis yourself, and then if you are aware of the vanity of what's the object part of the sentences you are submitted to by the physicians, by anyone, then you know that you have to focus on the subject, which is shifting from one sentence to the next. That's so many I that comes one after the other, and that finishes on each period. It's full stop at the end of each sentences, and a new I, a new ego. No, not ego. Sorry. A new I, a new subject emerges with a new sentence. Well, it's psychoanalysis helps you to be inhabited by a revolution model, and it's not actually a complete revolution in the proper sense of the term. It's half a revolution. It's a way to come back to the beginning of each sentence at the end of each sentence. You don't make a complete turn. You make half. You come back to the beginning, because it was at the beginning that the I was standing. And this is revolutionary.
So with this model in mind, there's a hope that in the United States, for instance, there is the possibility of a psychoanalysis.
Possibility stands possibility stands. Yeah, well, it's for some happy few or unhappy few.
Mhm. Two things come to mind. One is that most of American practice was founded by the ego psychologists from
Yeah.
Germany who fled uh, during the 30s, and the model they established was that the psychoanalyst, because he or she was analyzed, had a purified view of reality, and that the goal of the treatment was to get the analysand to model their structure in submission to the analyst, which is a master's discourse. That's one thing. The second thing that occurred to me was, I don't know if you've ever gone to a sushi bar and they have the little pictorial menus that they put on the table that shows the various sushi you can order. And if you turn the menu around and you look in the bottom right-hand corner, they have an image sea urchin roll. And it's if you've never had it, I can't recommend it because what they do on the menu is over sea urchin, the image of sea urchin roll, they put the word challenging. And I think that's a good image for psychoanalysis.
Thank you very much for your time. I think this has been a very enlightening conversation. I hope that we can have many more as we travel down the line of technicalities in the future. And I really appreciate bringing so much of a lamp to what otherwise remains rather opaque.
Mhm.
Yeah, sure.